My name is John Hall. I'm a strategy coach, and this presentation covers strategy coaching in the context of the dominance of Porter's paradigm. Since Porter's seminal book in 1980, when the structure he brought to strategy seemed to offer a response to the emerging challenges of globalisation, his approach has been taught to countless undergraduates and MBA students. Strategy coaches will encounter this mode of thinking, and it provides as close to a common language as it gets in the field. According to Porter, strategy is creation of a unique and valuable competitive position, sustainably profitable, involving differentiated activities. It is trade-offs made in activities based on the choice of competitive position, and it is ensuring activities fit with one another and the overall strategy. In sum, it is a rational, planned approach. Porter saw degree of competition as manifested in external industry-wide factors determining profitability. So his analysis template focuses on 5 competitive forces. The degree of rivalry in the industry can vary from cutthroat to relatively relaxed. Suppliers to the industry can influence this, as well as those who buy from the industry. Substitute products are a threat to the industry, as are new entrants, depending on the barriers to entry. These forces are structural determinants, in that they have long-term effects on competitiveness. Conducting an industry analysis this way provides a picture of a company's strengths and weaknesses. Strategic decisions can then be made, such as adopting a defensive or offensive strategy. These could include building capability in current positions, changing positions, or recognising viable new positions developing before rivals. Continued focus on optimising what a company is already doing is not strategy, and will lead to rivals' competitiveness converging, unless position is reconsidered according to these structural forces. Porter goes on to propose companies can adopt one of 3 generic strategies in response to their analysis of the 5 competitive forces. Cost leadership, broad customer base and low price focus, provides a defence against all 5 of the forces. Differentiation, broad customer base and unique products, offers an alternative mode of dealing with the 5 forces than just price, for example with brand loyalty. A segmentation strategy, targeting a geography, product group or customer segment better than rivals, can combine some of the advantages of differentiation and cost leadership, but for a smaller market. Whilst not being mutually exclusive, straddling strategies and becoming stuck in the middle is unlikely to lead to success. Porter's final major contribution has been the idea of a value chain. Rather than thinking of a company as a collection of functions, he proposed that it was the activities and the way that they followed from each other to create value that was strategically relevant. The aim of the generic strategies is to generate a margin, that is a difference between the value created and the cost of its creation. The value chain model allows this to be captured. Porter's models are widely used, and as such it is necessary to understand the implications of using them in strategic thinking. Here, strategy is a top-down process, led by those whose elevated position gives them the necessary experience, vision and authority. Strategy setting is necessarily a separate activity which precedes implementation, whilst implementation is relatively trivial compared to strategy making. Moreover, a good strategy can be arrived at by planning and analysis, as this can model the rational thought that drives real behaviour in competitive markets. Industries are defined structurally, and where a company wants to compete is what defines it. Therefore, an external focus on factors outside the company is what drives strategy. It is important to be aware of potential blind spots when using Porter's strategic approach. Government, social and cultural influences are not prominently highlighted, but are likely to be very influential on competitiveness and strategy. The model is a relatively simple causal approach. Cooperation is not considered as an alternative to competition, and increasingly so, the structure of an industry does not always conform to simple chains. The 5 forces are not independent. There will be interactions between them. It is not easy to understand as a dynamic model, although competitors will react to positions taken in turn influencing one's own positional choices, so it does not have an overt systems focus. Finally, simply filling the boxes will not indicate the required actions that need to be taken. Further insights are required. We will now review the positions of two strategy writers with a different perspective to Porter. Porter can be characterised as belonging to the classical school, where strategy is deliberate and profit-focused. An opposite perspective is taken by the processual school, where strategy is seen to be emergent and serving other outcomes beyond profit. Mintzberg and Hamel, who co-authored much of his influential work with C.K. Prahalid, are two such writers. Mintzberg was relaxed about semantics, believing rigid strategy definitions cause confusion. In his approach, strategy can validly mean many things: a plan, a ploy, a position, or a perspective. Given human nature, strategy is never exclusively either a plan or an entirely unconscious pattern evident in a stream of decisions. In this sense, strategy may be emergent or deliberate, but will likely have characteristics of both. In fact, many deliberate strategies may have been emergent, but not recognised as such. For Mintzberg, strategy was the insights that emerged from the transition process, from one configuration of an organisation to another. Configurations could be influenced by any strategy school, including Porter's, but the strategy would emerge from the action of change. As such, strategy can be seen as a craft, with managers needing reflexivity to recognise these patterns. Mintzberg refutes Porter's assumptions of underpinning rational thought driving competitive behaviour, instead recognising cognitive biases. He strongly criticises Porter's approach by identifying four fallacies. First, the future cannot be predicted. When it appears so, it is simply an illusion until less stable conditions prevail. The idea that detached senior executives relying on aggregated data without being immersed in the organisation can effectively create strategy is another fallacy. Nor can the process be formalised using templates. This will only preserve categories, not creatively rearrange them or invent new ones. Finally, Mintzberg states the grand fallacy, that because analysis is not synthesis, strategic planning is not strategy formulation. Planners may be a catalyst, but managers immersed in the business must gain insights from all sources to formulate the direction to pursue. Hence, intuition and creativity, using both hard and soft data, and being prepared to get hands dirty, are needed. Hamel proposes three critical questions to drive industry insights. What could customers value in 10 to 15 years' time? What new competencies does the company need to deliver this? How does it need to reconfigure its customer interface? Industry foresight requires imagination and curiosity to absorb the trends in lifestyle, technology, demographics, and geopolitics. From this vision of what could be, one can then work backwards to the implications for now and articulate this in terms of core competencies. Core competencies are valued by customers, differentiated from those of competitors, and extendable gateways to future markets. Strategy is not an amalgamation of business unit strategies, but built from the basic blocks of core competencies, which cut across business units. On the last point, Hamel likens strategic architecture to the brain, being emotional, structured, and intellectual. Industry foresight is an intellectual competition for industry control, thus securing a company's future. Strategic intent is likened to a heart, providing a dream that engages and stretches the company. Hamel believes strategy was discredited as it failed to meet the contemporary challenges of regenerating leadership, not just extending it. In particular, Hamel said Porter's product and market approach only covers the last 100 yards of a skill-building marathon, leading to the two strategic myopias he has identified. Firstly, focusing on the current market limits imagination. Instead, a competence focus is needed to imagine what is possible in future. Secondly, focus on the current business and products rather than current customer benefits hinders the visioning of future customer benefits. Hamel also takes issue with the concept of fit, instead intentionally creating a stretch between ambitions and resources can create motivating strategies that blend the deliberate and the emergent. Finally, going beyond Mintzberg's idea of mere immersion, Hamel looks towards contrarians at all levels of an organisation to drive strategy as revolution and thus create the future. As coaches, we need to be able to work with Porter's dominant model and avoid imposing our preferred model on clients. Our biggest contribution should be to the process, not the content. Clients need to be challenged to go beyond simply filling the boxes and explore how to change supplier power, buyer power, for instance. We can make the process dynamic by introducing a systems view, where a client is challenged on competitor responses to their position choices, influencing in turn the client's position further. Many companies, through incremental changes, lose sight of their strategy. A solution-focused approach is an ideal coaching process to rediscover unique strengths, clarify their relevance, and build the refocusing process of trade-offs and position deepening or shifting. Finally, as Porter's thinking is widely known, how can anyone gain a competitive advantage using it? Perhaps the rigour of a coaching process can provide a competitive edge in the content generation. The UK's top-ranked business school, the London Business School, does not cover strategy approaches other than classical. As such, there is an opportunity for coaches to help clients see strategy through a number of different lenses. Mintzberg's 4 fallacies and Hamel's industry foresight, myopias and competence evaluations are great sources of Socratic questions to test client strategies and generate counterfactual cases. Both writers also increase the lexicon of strategy language available to help clients articulate strategies. Mintzberg's focus on the process giving rise to strategy, not the content, is exactly aligned with a coaching approach. Coaching can encourage the reflexivity needed to see the impact of a chosen strategy process on the content and of content choice on the process. His more emergent and deliberate mindset emphasises strategy as a collective experimentation and learning process, again a core coaching competence to facilitate. As Hamel says, perspective is worth 50 IQ points in the strategy making process. Coaches are expert at helping clients gain perspective, whether that is in seeing their business units differently by changing to a competencies lens, or in imagining how strategy might look through the eyes of junior and contrarian employees more deeply immersed in the business. Facilitating these shifts in viewing is a powerful technique in enabling organisations to change their doing. And finally, Hamel's more internal focus than Porter's aligns with the coaching approach of investing energy on what you can change. No one should have to go before a workforce or a board with a strategy that is pure box filling. Porter's eponymous 5 forces and generic strategies can encourage this mistake. Porter's approaches are too perfectly known to be an ultimate source of competitive advantage, and the blind spots in this approach may obscure increasingly vital contested ground for contemporary organisations. It should now be self-evident from which schools the 2 columns of strategy-related terms are drawn. A strategy coach can be part of a crucial alliance, even if the orthodox paradigm on the right is an ascendancy in your organisation. Rather like left-handed writing, facilitation of the appropriate consideration of some of the perspectives on the left can help create challenge, discomfort, reframing of familiar problems, innovation, and ultimately a true competitive edge for your organisation.